That news cycle
Yeah.
just blasts you with random facts, and it's so hard to know what's actually important.
Right.
But that's what we try to do in these deep dives, right?
Exactly.
Sift through all that noise.
Yeah.
Find the hidden gems of knowledge, and
Help connect the dots.
yeah, help connect the dots, make you think a little differently about the world.
That's the goal.
And today we've got like a grab bag of global issues that at first glance you might be like, wait, what do these things have in common? We're talking H-1B visas, a statue controversy in the Himalayas, and the unexpected comeback of polio.
Sounds random.
Yeah, like how did we even end up with these three? But trust me, they're all connected in some really fascinating ways.
They really are. It's all about interconnectedness.
It is.
You think about it, the flow of talent across borders, geopolitical tensions, simmering in these remote landscapes, and then like a disease we thought we had eradicated. Like, how is that back? All of these things just emphasize how actions in one part of the world can have ripple effects that go way beyond just that location.
So, okay, let's start with something that's been making headlines recently. The H-1B visa program here in the U.S., even Elon Musk is weighing in on this, highlighting how crucial global talent is in today's economy. But can you just give us a quick rundown of what the H-1B visa is all about? I know our listeners are a savvy bunch, so no need for like the dictionary definition here.
Okay, so we're talking about those specialized jobs, particularly in STEM fields where U.S. companies need to bring in talent from overseas.
Right.
Because there's a shortage. They need to address it. They're not finding the workers here in the U.S.
Right. It's about filling those gaps, keeping American businesses competitive. But this isn't just a U.S. thing, is it? This talent flow that's happening on a global scale?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And the numbers are really interesting when you look at STEM graduates worldwide. India and China are like way ahead of everyone else.
Yep.
With 2020 alone, China graduated 3.57 million STEM students. India, 2.55 million. Wow.
Compared to the U.S., which had 820,000.
Oh, wow.
So the H-1B program, with its annual cap of 65,000 visas, plus 20,000 for those with U.S. master's degrees, that's just a tiny snapshot of this massive global talent migration.
That really puts things in perspective. It's not just about, filling a few job openings. It's a global competition for the best and brightest minds.
Absolutely.
And that limited number of H-1B visas, that creates a bottleneck, doesn't it?
It does.
Makes you wonder, what are the economic and social implications? Are certain industries like feeling the squeeze more than others because of this cap?
Right, like tech and healthcare. They rely so heavily on these specialized skills.
Yeah.
So they're particularly vulnerable to those shortages.
Yeah. And competition for those visas must just drive up salaries. It creates these inequalities.
For sure, it's a very complex issue with a lot of consequences. Definitely makes you think about the winners and losers in this global talent game. But this whole idea of competition takes on a whole new meaning. In our next story, we're heading to Pangong So, a high-altitude lake in the Himalayas.
Oh, beautiful.
I love a good geography lesson, so tell us what makes this place so special.
Well, for starters, it's just breathtakingly beautiful.
Okay.
So picture this, a crystal clear lake nestled amidst these towering Himalayan peaks.
Okay.
But it gets really interesting. Pangong So is brackish.
Brackish.
It's got a mix of fresh and salt water.
Oh, wow.
And it was formed millions of years ago when the Indian tectonic plate collided with the Eurasian plate, creating the Himalayas. So we're talking ancient history here.
Like a piece of the ocean trapped in the mountains. That's pretty incredible.
It is.
But this beautiful lake, it's also a bit of a hotbed of geopolitical tension, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So recently a statue of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj.
Okay.
He was a revered Maratha warrior king.
Okay.
And the statue was unveiled on the banks of Pangong.
So seems pretty harmless, right?
But this very simple act is so loaded with symbolism, especially in a region that's disputed by India and China.
So it's not just a statue, it's a statement.
Exactly.
A way of staking a claim to this strategically vital area.
And to make it even more complex, there's now a proposal to put up a statue of Zorawar Singh, a Dogra general who expanded the Dogra kingdom's control over Ladakh back in the 19th century.
It's like a game of chess, each statue representing a different historical narrative.
Right.
A different claim to the region.
Absolutely.
But this isn't just about history, is it?
No.
It's about the present and the future, who controls this territory, who has the right to tell its story.
Exactly.
How will these symbolic gestures play out in the larger geopolitical game?
Yeah, it's a reminder that geography and history are very much intertwined.
Yeah.
And even seemingly symbolic acts can have very real-world consequences.
Especially in these regions with such complex and contested histories. Speaking of unexpected consequences, our next story might make you do a double take. Polio is back. Seriously. I thought we had pretty much eradicated this disease. What's going on here?
Yeah, well, the World Health Organization has recently found poliovirus in places that we didn't expect,
Really?
including Pakistan and even some European cities.
Okay, this is not the news I was expecting, so what's fueling this resurgence?
So a couple of factors. First, we're seeing immunization gaps, especially in conflict zones like Sudan,
Right.
where vaccination coverage has really dropped.
Oh, wow.
And then there's the issue of the virus just popping up in places where we thought it was gone,
Yeah.
which suggests that there might be pockets of unvaccinated or undervaccinated people, even in developed countries.
That's a little unsettling, to say the least. Makes you wonder about the effectiveness of vaccination programs
It does.
and how we make sure that everyone is protected. But didn't we also switch from one type of polio vaccine to another? Could that be playing a role in this?
You're right, there was a shift from the oral polio vaccine, or OPV, to the inactivated polio vaccine, or IPV.
Okay, I vaguely remember learning about this back in school, but a refresher would be great. What are the key differences between those, and why did we make the switch?
Okay, so the OPV, which uses a weakened but live virus, is really easy to administer. It's relatively cheap and provides good immunity.
Okay.
But in extremely rare cases, that weakened virus can mutate
Oh.
and actually cause outbreaks of what we call vaccine-derived poliovirus.
So a tiny risk, but a risk nonetheless.
Right, and the IPV uses a killed virus, so it's super safe, and it's effective at preventing paralysis.
But
But it's more expensive, requires multiple doses, and it doesn't provide the same level of gut immunity as the OPV,
right.
meaning it might not be as good at stopping the spread.
So it's a trade-off.
Yeah.
The OPV easier to use, better at preventing transmission, but carries a slight risk IPV, incredibly safe, but might not stop the spread as effectively.
Right.
And this switch to IPV, while it was part of this global effort to eradicate polio completely, could be contributing to these unexpected outbreaks.
Especially if vaccination rates aren't high enough.
Yeah, it highlights those complexities of public health interventions.
Right.
The need to constantly adapt our strategies based on new evidence.
Absolutely.
Evolving circumstances. It makes you wonder about how we communicate these complexities to the public.
For sure.
How do we build trust in vaccination programs?
It's very important.
Yeah, science is always evolving, and what we thought was a solved problem can sometimes resurface these unexpected ways.
It's true.
And this idea of interconnectedness of human actions having unintended consequences leads us to our next story, which takes us to Vembanad Lake in Kerala, India.
Oh, beautiful.
This might seem like a local issue, but it speaks to a much larger global challenge, the impact of human activities on the environment.
Right. Vembanad is the largest lake in Kerala.
Wow.
It's a lifeline for the region's ecosystem and economy. It supports so many different plants and animals, provides livelihoods for millions of people.
Yeah.
It's even been designated as a Ramsar wetland of international importance because it's so ecologically significant. But like many waterways around the world, it's facing some serious environmental threats.
That's a shame. It sounds like a truly special place.
It is.
What kind of threats are we talking about?
Pollution, mainly.
Okay.
A recent study found that the lake's water retention capacity has declined by 85.3% since 1990.
85%.
That's huge.
That's alarming. And it's not just about the lake itself. It's about the 8 million people whose lives and livelihoods are intertwined with this lake.
Absolutely.
Makes you think about those ripple effects, how environmental degradation can have these far-reaching social and economic consequences.
For sure.
So what's being done to address this crisis?
So there are efforts to reverse this trend,
Okay.
which is encouraging.
Yeah.
Local authorities are planning a big cleanup,
Okay.
focusing on removing plastic waste,
Right.
which is a problem that's plaguing waterways all over the world.
Yeah.
They're also establishing a bioshield.
A bioshield.
Yeah. They're planting native vegetation along the lake's edges to try to filter pollutants and prevent erosion.
Oh, that's cool.
And importantly, they're involving local communities in these efforts.
Love that.
Because they recognize that sustainable solutions require the participation of everyone who depends on the lake.
It's a reminder that environmental stewardship isn't just the responsibility of governments or big organizations.
Right.
It's something that we all have a role to play in.
We do.
But this brings us to this bigger idea that kind of ties all these stories together, this concept of transformative change that was highlighted in a recent report by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, or IPBES for short.
Yeah.
I'll admit, I'm always a little bit wary of buzzwords. Is this just another trendy term, or is there real substance behind it?
There's definitely more than just a buzzword here.
Okay.
The IPBES report makes a very powerful argument for the need for fundamental shifts in how we interact with nature. They're not talking about incremental changes or Band-Aid solutions. They're calling for a complete transformation in our systems
Wow.
of governance, economics, even our values. It's a bold vision, for sure.
Okay. I'm intrigued, but also a little bit skeptical.
I get it.
What does this transformative change actually look like in practice? How do we even begin to achieve something so monumental? And what does it mean for us, the everyday people, just trying to navigate this crazy, complex world?
That's where it gets really interesting. The report outlines 5 key strategies for achieving this transformation. So the 5 strategies are conserving systemic change, economic transformation, adaptive governance, and knowledge systems.
Okay.
Sounds kind of daunting, I know.
It does.
But the report emphasizes that these strategies, they can be applied at all these different levels, from individual actions to like global policy shifts.
That makes it feel a little less overwhelming. It's not just about waiting for governments to act or hoping that some magical technology is going to come and save us.
Exactly.
We could all be part of the solution.
We can.
But I need specifics. Give me some examples of things that are already working. Give me some hope.
Okay, so let's take that first strategy. The conserving and regenerating ecosystems we always hear about, protecting rainforests and coral reefs, right?
Right.
But there are all these really inspiring initiatives happening like right in our backyards, literally. There's this growing movement of urban gardening and rewilding projects.
Oh, yeah.
Where communities are taking these like neglected spaces and transforming them into thriving ecosystems.
I love that bringing nature back into our cities and towns. It's like we're finally remembering that nature doesn't just belong in these far-off wilderness areas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And these projects have so many benefits. They provide habitats for wildlife, they improve air and water quality, they create green spaces where people can just relax, connect with nature,
Yeah.
and they build a sense of community.
It's like hitting the reset button on our relationship with nature, and it's something that anyone can participate in.
It is.
Even if you just have a small balcony or window box.
Right.
Plant native flowers to attract pollinators.
Yeah.
Grow your own food, or just create like a little haven for birds and insects.
Exactly.
It's those small but meaningful connections.
They really are. Those small actions can absolutely make a difference.
Yeah.
But let's zoom out for a second and think about systemic change in these key sectors, like agriculture. We need to feed a growing population.
Yeah.
But the way we produce food right now, it puts a huge strain on the planet.
It's a tough balancing act, isn't it?
It is.
Meeting our needs without depleting those very resources that we depend on.
Right. But the good news is that there are these innovative approaches to agriculture that are way more sustainable.
Okay.
Even regenerative.
Like what?
Things like permaculture, agroforestry, and regenerative grazing.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, these methods focus on working with nature, not against it. They emphasize building healthy soil, conserving water, promoting biodiversity.
I've been hearing more and more about regenerative agriculture.
Exactly.
It's like going beyond just sustaining the land. It's about actually improving its health over time.
Exactly.
Sounds almost too good to be true.
Well, it's not a quick fix, and it requires a shift in mindset.
Okay.
You know, we need to move away from maximizing just those short-term yields
Right.
and really focus on the long-term soil health and that ecological balance.
Yeah.
But there's more and more evidence that these methods can produce really high-quality food while sequestering carbon, improving water infiltration,
Wow.
enhancing biodiversity.
So it's not just about mitigating the negative impacts of agriculture.
Right.
It's about turning it into a force for good.
Exactly.
A way to heal the environment that's amazing.
It is, and it shows how interconnected all of these issues are.
It does.
It requires collaboration between farmers and scientists and policymakers and even consumers.
Right.
It's about creating this whole system that supports these changes.
Yeah.
And makes them viable and accessible.
That brings us to the third strategy, transforming our economic systems. This one seems particularly challenging
Yes.
because it's so deeply ingrained in our way of life.
Yeah.
You know, how do we move away from this model that prioritizes endless growth and consumption when that's the foundation of like our entire economy?
Yeah, it's a huge question and there are no easy answers, but I think one crucial aspect is recognizing the true value of nature.
Okay.
We've treated natural resources as free and unlimited for so long, and we ignore the costs.
Right, those costs of environmental degradation.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like we haven't factored in the real cost of doing business,
We
the
have.
cost to the environment, to
Yeah.
future generations.
Exactly. So one approach is to incorporate those costs into our economic calculations.
Okay, how do we do that?
This could involve things like carbon pricing ecosystem, service payments, or other mechanisms that internalize what we call those externalities.
So instead of just focusing on GDP as the sole measure of progress,
Right.
we need to consider things like clean air and water go, healthy ecosystems, the well-being of communities, a
Exactly.
more holistic view of prosperity.
Absolutely. And there are these alternative economic models that are emerging that are based on these very principles.
Like what?
You've probably heard of the circular economy, the sharing economy, even the donut economics model.
Vaguely.
Yeah, they all emphasize resource efficiency, reuse, and regeneration.
Right.
It's about shifting away from that linear take-make-waste model
Yeah.
to something more circular, more sustainable.
I love that these models, they challenge us to rethink our relationship with material goods
Yeah.
and find ways to decouple economic growth from resource depletion and environmental degradation.
Yes, big task.
It is. But let's be realistic. All of these changes, all of these innovative solutions, they all require a supportive policy environment,
It do.
which means engaging with governments, advocating for change at a political level.
Absolutely, you're right. And that's where that fourth strategy comes in.
Okay.
Adaptive governance. It's about creating these governance systems that are flexible, inclusive, and responsive to the needs of people and the planet.
So instead of those top-down, one-size-fits-all policies,
Right.
we need systems that can adapt.
Yeah.
Changing circumstances, incorporate diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
Sounds like that requires a lot of collaboration and communication.
A lot of communication, bringing together stakeholders from different sectors,
Like who?
government agencies, businesses, NGOs, local communities,
Right.
recognizing that there's no single solution.
Yeah.
Works for everyone.
Yeah.
And that the best solutions often emerge from this collaborative problem solving.
And that ties back to that idea of transforming knowledge systems.
Right.
Recognizing that valuable knowledge can come from all these diverse sources, not just the traditional institutions.
Absolutely.
We need to be listening to indigenous communities, local farmers,
Yeah.
citizen scientists.
Everyone.
Everyone has something to contribute.
For sure, it's about breaking down those silos and hierarchies and creating a more interconnected approach to knowledge creation,
Yeah.
decision-making. It's about valuing those diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
Recognizing that we can learn from each other.
This conversation has been so insightful. I feel like it's given me a much clearer understanding of what transformative change actually means and how we move from these big abstract ideas
Right?
to concrete
That's action.
Yeah.
It feels hopeful,
It is hopeful.
even in the face of all these complex challenges.
It's inspiring to see all the innovative solutions and all those collaborative efforts happening all over the world.
Yeah.
People are coming together to address these challenges,
Yeah.
create a more sustainable and just future.
It's a reminder that we're not powerless. We can all be part of the solution.
Absolutely.
Whether it's through individual choices or community involvement or advocating for that systemic change.
Yeah.
We all have a role to play. But on that note, I think it's a good place to pause for a moment.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have from talent migration to statues as geopolitical chess pieces,
Yeah.
from the unexpected comeback of polio to a lake that's struggling to survive.
Yeah.
We've seen how interconnected our world really is and how these seemingly disparate issues all point to this need for a more holistic,
Yeah.
sustainable approach to how we live and interact with our planet.
We'll be back in a moment to wrap up our deep dive and leave you with some final thoughts to ponder. So much to think about.
I know, right?
It's easy to get overwhelmed by just how complex the world is, from these talent flows and geopolitical tensions to disease outbreaks,
Yeah.
the environmental challenges facing places like Vembanad Lake.
They can feel chaotic sometimes.
Yeah, but I think what we've uncovered in this deep dive is that even amidst all that chaos, there are patterns,
There are.
there are solutions, and there are brilliant people working on these complex issues.
Absolutely.
That's what I love about these deep dives.
Yeah.
We get to step back from that daily fire hose of information
Right.
and actually connect the dots.
Yeah.
See the bigger picture, and what emerges is this picture of resilience,
Yeah.
innovation, and a growing awareness that we're all in this together.
We are, and that's really the essence of that transformative change, isn't it?
It
It's a
is.
shift in consciousness,
Yeah,
recognizing our interconnectedness,
right.
believing that both our individual and collective actions can make a difference and shape a better future.
So let's bring it back to you, our listener. What resonated with you most during this deep dive?
Hmm.
Was it that image of Pangong, so that
Mhm.
breathtaking lake kind of caught in this geopolitical tug of war where even statues become these powerful symbols?
Yeah, or the story of Vembanad Lake
Yeah.
and its struggle for survival, a very real reminder that our actions have far-reaching consequences.
Yeah, maybe it was that unsettling realization that polio,
Right.
a disease we thought we'd conquered, can come back
It can.
if we let our guard down on public health measures. Or maybe what struck you was that potential of transformative change.
Right.
Those 5 strategies we talked about, the conserving ecosystems, systemic change, economic transformation, adaptive governance, and knowledge systems,
Yeah,
they might seem daunting at first,
they do.
but they really do offer like a roadmap, a way forward.
They do, and that's what we want to leave you with today,
Yeah,
that sense of possibility.
right. What aspect of transformative change kind of sparked your curiosity? What small action in your own life aligns with this vision of a more sustainable and equitable future? Maybe it's planting a tree in your backyard,
Yeah.
supporting a local farmer who's using regenerative practices,
Right.
or just having a conversation with your friends and family about these issues.
Absolutely.
Or maybe it's something bigger, get involved in your community, advocate for policy changes, start a business that embraces those principles of sustainability and social responsibility.
Yeah, those are all great ideas.
Transformative change, it starts with each of us.
It does.
It's about those everyday choices, those moments where we decide to act, in alignment with our values.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, keep making those connections,
Yeah.
because the future is not something that happens to us.
Right.
It's something we create together. And thanks for joining us on the deep dive.